What's up and welcome back to the channel. This is part 2 of the 69 Nova front end suspension upgrade. So hope you checked out part 1. Part 1, really what we focused on was taking all of the old stuff out. We did spend some time going through the new stuff that we're going to install today. So I'm not going to go back through that. If you haven't seen it, check it out. I will include links in the description for the parts that we're going to install today. But again, we're not going to go through an unboxing or anything like that. Last night, I was mocking up the Ridetech steering upgrade kit that we're going to put on here, and I realized that the idler arm that they put in the kit was wrong. So we do have a little bit of a setback there, but I do want to show you the mock-up. So I took all of the original equipment that I took off, mocked it up on the ground over here, I'm going to show you shortly, and I put in, right next to it, all of the new upgraded stuff so you could kind of see it side by side. So let's take a quick look at that before we get started. Okay, as you can see, I've got everything laid out on the ground here just to give you a look at the different level of quality of the OEM versus the aftermarket, and also just to kind of show you the part. It was obvious when you look the original versus what was sent. That's kind of got that no bend in it straight across and almost like a 90. So it was really obvious that it wasn't correct, and I looked back on their website to check, and sure enough, it's the wrong one. So no problem. Again, we'll reach out, see if they'll send us what we need. In the meantime, we're going to go ahead and get the Pitman arm in there, and then we'll move over and start working on the lower control arms. Okay, we're going to start just by cleaning it up a little bit. I didn't clean it up when I took it off. Nothing major. Just kind of wipe it off, clean it up a little. I'm going to put just a little anti-seize on the threads. Okay, so you may not be able to see the spline, but there is a spline, and it will really only go on one way. So what we're going to do here, I'm going to get it. See, like right there, it won't go, but when the splines are clocked correctly, it will. And in order to move this up, before we put the lock nut on, I'm gonna go ahead and put the nut on. I'm gonna run it tight, and then I'm gonna pull it off, and then add the lock washer. Go ahead and retighten it. And I'll check the torque specs on that and torque it down. Quick shot of it installed. Just note, you do have to retain your original hardware. So that was the original nut and then lock washer. And then also, if you were wondering, the size is a 1 5/16. That's the size socket I was using. If you don't have one of these, I'd highly suggest picking one up if you can. I got this off eBay. It's got a lot of great information. I'm just going to quickly show you when I was talking about that torque spec that you can go to. So it's calling for steering linkage 9D. Flips a 9D. There's the picture. I'm going to zoom in on the Pitman arm. You can see it there. And then you can see the note. There's a 3 there for your for the nut that goes on the back. So then you can go down to the note here, and at the 3 flag, torque spec 120 to 160. So I'll put the link in the description for this. I found it very helpful if you're going to be doing a lot of work on the car. I also have the Haynes. It's good as well, but not as detailed. So just thought I'd share that information. Okay, you're looking at the passenger side. We're getting ready to install the lower control arm. So I want to give you a shot at that. It's real simple. There's 2 bolts. One that goes through here, and then one on the other side. But what I've run into and I've seen other people have run into this as well. When you go to put the control arm in, it doesn't fit. And what I mean by that is it's just too tight to fit in. So you need a way to spread these apart a little bit to allow you to get the control arm in. So I'm just going to show you how I'm going to do that. I've got to fab up something real quick with, real simple, just bolt and washers that I've got here. So I'm going to fab that up, then we're going to look at how I'm going to spread that apart real quick. Now we're going to see if we got it apart far enough for the control arm to get in. I did put a little DW40 in there to try to help it slide in, so we'll see if it works out. All right, that went in. Now we just install the flat washer, the lock nut on each side. We're gonna get the shock ready to mount now. One thing I want to note, so when you get the kit, depending on if you're using QA1's control arms or if you're gonna use your stock ones, if you're gonna use your stock ones, the shock will come with this setup already. It'll be in. I pressed it out and I put this in. It was easy. The instructions are real straightforward, so I didn't record that, but did want to note that when you get it, if you get this same setup, it'll come set up for stock control arms rather than the QA1. So I did make that adjustment. What we're going to do is go ahead and get everything ready, which essentially is putting all the anti-seize on and then putting everything on in the order that it needs to be put on. And then we'll install it on the lower control arm. So real quick, the order that it goes on before I put all the anti-seize, you've got your locking collar, and this is your seat. This side up, your spring is going to seat on there, so shoulder up. And then the thrust kit, I've seen some videos where this is an extra thing that you have to buy. My kit came with it, so either way, highly recommend it. Essentially, you'll have a washer and then the bearing, and the bearing, then another washer. But what that allows it to do is when you're adjusting, if I can show that, when you're adjusting the height, it's going to allow it to work very easily without binding up. So that's the order everything goes on, but you want to put anti-seize all on here on these threads so that it won't bind up. Because if you tear these aluminum threads up, then this shock, or at least the coilover, it becomes basically unusable. So we're going to go ahead and do that and then get it ready to install. Okay, now that we have all the anti-seize on, we're getting ready to set the spring on. So we're going to set the spring on with the small side down. So the way the hardware goes, we've got the washer, you've got the bushing. You want the big side, there's a little side and a big side down. And now the shock is ready to go in. the shock and spring. All right, the lowers and the coilovers are now installed. Quick summary of what I just did. There's the single bolt at the bottom where the coilovers bolt in. I did end up having to put a little pressure on the bottom of the lower A-arm with the jack to get the top of the shock to come out to be able to put the nut on. So fairly easy, but we've got that all knocked out, so we're gonna move on to the front sway bar. Change of plans, we're not gonna move on to the sway bar. Quick backstory, my car was an original V6 car and they did not come equipped with sway bars is what I learned. So I did check the frame. It does look like it was drilled for it. So it does have 2 holes in both sides of the frame in the right spot to mount a sway bar. However, the instructions reference an OEM bushing that you need to reuse to mount the bracket. Obviously I don't have that, so I want to do a little more research on that and just make sure we have that before we get into that. So what we're going to do is we're going to pivot. We're going to go back to the Ridetech steering kit. I did get the new steering idler arm in this week, so we have everything to go ahead and get that installed. So we'll install that, then we'll come back to the uppers on the control arms, and then we'll probably be done. Give me time to go ahead and, like I said, research the sway bar. So real quick, let's just take a quick look. Here's the kit. You know, I had it laid out before earlier in this video. We did already install the Pitman arm, obviously, but as you can see now, our steering idler arm matches up. So we have everything. Again, we're gonna go ahead, get that all put back together, then we'll put in the uppers, and then we'll have everything done. Since we already had the Pitman arm installed, I installed the steering idler arm. It was just 2 bolts to the frame. Then I added the center link, as you can see there, which connected to the Pitman arm and the idler arm, the steering idler arm there, with the castle nuts, and that was torqued to 45 foot-pounds. So I'm going to stop there and hold on the tie rod ends, go ahead and assemble the upper and also the spindle, and then I'll come back to the tie rod ends at the very last of the install. In general, putting on the front upper control arm is pretty straightforward. We got 2 studs to put it on, a couple washers, bolts, and then your shim, your alignment shims. But if you remember, we did break the stud that has the gnarled end on it. So we're gonna have to try to thread this through while installing this, because if we put this in first, we won't be able to get this on just like we couldn't get it off. So it's gonna make it a little more challenging, but I think we should be able to get through it. This was not my first option to get this stud in. I tried to find a way to clamp it to press it in, and I just couldn't get anything on it. So I'm going to use this brass punch to put on the back and see if I can hammer in on the back on the head and get it to take, to get the head and the gnarls in. And so we're going to see how that goes. It's not spinning, it feels tight. I think that did the trick. We'll know once we start putting the hardware on. We'll go ahead and put the hardware on and we'll put the shims in. We'll know if the head spins or not. But just feeling inside compared to the other side, I mean, it feels flush and feels good and tight. So I think we're gonna be all right. Like I said, once we tighten it down and we go and we torque everything, as long as this stud doesn't turn, I think we're in good shape. There's a look at the upper and lower control arm now that they're both installed. The last thing we're going to do as far as the front for this video is we're going to go ahead and install the tie rod ends to the center link. And the reason we're going to stop there is because connecting the spindle and the steering arm, we might as well do that when we do the brakes, because we're going to convert the front to disc brakes. So we're going to go ahead and just finish this up as far as the front and get that tie rod end installed. Alright, we're going to insert it right there on the center link, put the castle nut on the other side, tighten it down, and put our cotter pin in. So nothing to it. Torque it to 40 foot-pounds. Have to make a little bit of adjustment for the cotter pin. There we go. Well, I plan to wrap up the video by installing the rear shocks. Simple install with the upper shock mounts, 2 bolts. And then you got one through the bottom here, generally. However, it looks like there's been some modifications to my Nova in the back. It looks like the rear mounting point has been cut and grinded and painted, and no big deal. You expect that. That's on me. I should have prepared and looked at that. But this is going to be a project for another day, because now I've got to decide, do I want to relocate the shocks? Really, it'll all tie into what I decide to do with the rear end and the drive shaft, and ultimately the suspension in the back. So we'll leave that for another day. We'll just wrap this video up here. But I do want to thank you for watching, and I hope you'll come back. Looking forward to going ahead and putting the disc brakes on the front on the next video. So hope you'll join me for that. Till next time, see you later.